Welcome to Nick and Dave Deep Dive the Metaverse, a podcast exploring cult classics, subculture, and geek media. I'm Nick.
And I'm Dave.
And we will be your tour guides for this deep dive of Tony Scott's 1983 neo-noir psychosexual vampire thriller, The Hunger.
Yeah, I like that description. It kind of encompasses all of the big beats. I mean, this is David Bowie in a vampire movie. Let's be real.
You don't know how long I kind of went back and forth on whether to call it expressionistic or neo-noir because they overlap with each other so much.
Sure.
But ultimately, the trench coat and fedora and all of the light coming through Venetian blinds, I went with neo-noir. I think that was the bigger influence over German expressionism.
Okay, well, it's good. I liked the neo-noir part of that because, there's, like David Bowie with a trench coat and a fedora and wearing a suit all the time. And they have this really cool apartment and there's always these shafts of light. It takes place in New York. Mm-hmm. New York feels like a character in the movie. Yeah,
this is a very New York movie. Like, a lot of movies get filmed in New York.
Yeah.
But this one is, like, really in New York.
Yeah, there's a lot of walking on the street and entering these big, beautiful buildings that feel old and have weight to them.
Yeah, I saw this interview with Ed Norton the other day. This just minor tangent. And he was talking about you can always tell when the cinematographer is from New York versus whether they're just visiting by how they shoot the Brooklyn Bridge. So, I mean, I don't have the frame of reference to know if this one shot it in the true New York fashion or the tourist fashion. But I did notice the obligatory bridge shot.
Yeah, this movie is really interesting because it had somewhat of a mixed reception. Mm-hmm. I think everybody wants to love it because David Bowie's in it.
Yeah.
But its storytelling didn't land with everybody.
Right.
So it was one of those things where some people really liked it and some people didn't. It also felt like, and we'll get into this, but it felt like it had a little bit of a mixed identity.
Yeah.
In that there's like these random scenes of like 80s club people dancing or music or light, like strange kind of like 80s neo I don't know what you call it, new wave or sort of goth vibes in there thrown in, and they are related to a vampire movie, but they're not really related to the story of John and Miriam, the two leads.
Correct. Yeah. Had you seen this movie before?
No, this is a first go, and I watched it cold.
Yeah. So I had seen...
I literally started it and I said, David Bowie's in this.
Oh, you didn't know?
No.
Yeah. I had only seen two scenes because I had seen a version of the opening scene because that is the official video for Bela Lugosi's Dead is a rework of that opening sequence.
And that opening sequence is really cool.
Yes, for sure.
The opening of this movie is dope, so check it out.
And then because I have, I'm a Susan Sarandon enthusiast on some level, I'd seen the sex scene from later in the movie also.
Okay.
Yeah. Shout out to Mr. Skin for pulling all the nude scenes from movies.
Yeah, I mean this movie's just really interesting and really weird. I'm glad that we're kind of deep diving another vampire movie. Mm-hmm. And we'll if you divers have any ideas about vampire movies or werewolf movies, because Nick's into that, go ahead and tweet at us. We both kind of talked about on our personal socials about this and got a lot of suggestions from people we know.
Yeah, and we got we put the question out on Instagram also, and so far only one response. So give Instagram some love, divers.
Yeah, it's important. All right, so I mean, I don't want to talk too much about this movie before we get into it.
Okay.
So what have you been up to?
Oh man, for once I've done some stuff.
Oh man.
So last weekend, I mean, staying on the vampire topic, the Hollywood Theater here in Portland has been doing like a series of Werner Herzog movies. Mm-hmm. And of course I had to go see Nosferatu on the big screen. I couldn't let that slip by.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a dope movie. I had never I'd never seen that before. I've seen the silent version, like the 1921 Murnau Nosferatu, several times. I have like 2 VHSs of it, one to organ music and one set to Typo Negative.
Oh, nice.
But I'd never seen the Werner Herzog remake, and it's really cool. I know him mainly as a documentarian, like from movies like Grizzly Man, and he definitely brings that like cinema verite kind of embedded in the action feeling to the movie. So yeah, check that out. And then my nephew and his girlfriend came down. They wanted to get breakfast with us, or excuse whatever to come down to Portland.
Yeah.
And we went out and had breakfast, and then they had kind of some weeby spots they wanted to hit around Portland. So I ended up tour guiding them. We went to Muji, which is like a Japanese home goods store.
Yeah, I like that place.
And a Kinokuniya bookstore, and they picked up some manga and stuff.
Nice.
And then actually last night I went to a stand-up comedy show for the first time in, I don't know, 100 years.
Man, that's crazy. Who was playing?
Mark Maron at the Aladdin Theater.
Is that really stand-up comedy, or is it just spoken word?
I think that line is fuzzy. There's joke. If you're laughing to me, I'm going to lean towards calling it comedy.
Yeah,
he identifies as a comic.
And all of these podcasters really are, they're like storytellers, and they just make it kind of witty and funny. It's not the same as like a guy who's just like doing like one-liners, like a Mitch Hedberg kind of a vibe,
yeah. And his opener, Dean Del Rey was the opener, and they're homies. And he was much more of like traditional like jokes kind of stand-up, and not so much like storytelling, like you said.
I really enjoy the storytelling style.
And Mark Maron is really, you got to give him his props for being kind of one of the OG podcasters that really made this a platform that we're all kind of enjoying now.
Yeah, he's. I think you would probably call him like a second gen podcaster. One of the ones that made it really popular. Kind of like if you use black metal as the allegory, he's like a Dark Throne kind of a character.
Yeah, for sure.
He didn't invent it, but he certainly helped popularize it and helped popularize the style that is really popular right now. That's a little more personal, a little less radio-ish.
Yeah.
The first podcasts, not to be too nerdy about it, but the very first podcasts were made by some radio guys, and so they were very radio-ish with kind of the yakety yak kind of nonsense.
Yeah, he's one of those people where it's like he's not a professional interviewer, and it shows in a good way, where he doesn't ask like the standard questions, and he seems very actually bored with the standard questions, and gets people to really like open up in a personal way. So
I think that's one of the strengths of this medium, and one of the reasons like I really enjoy listening to podcasts is for interviewing. So I guess maybe we should just if we both like it, we should do some interviewing.
Yeah, for sure.
That'd be cool.
One of these days. We keep talking about it.
Yeah, we keep talking about it, and we will eventually.
Maybe if we ever get ahead of schedule again, like we were for a while.
Yeah, we were ahead of schedule, and now we're just on schedule.
Yeah. So what about you? What have you been up to?
Well, I mean, nothing crazy like seeing some movies at the theater or anything like that. But it was my birthday.
I'll just say both places require you to show proof of vaccination before you go in. So I'm not just out there being reckless.
Sick virtue signal, bro.
Thanks. Okay, I cut you off. What were you about to say?
It was my birthday, and
happy birthday,
and wedding anniversary the other day, which are the same day. I also bought this house that we sit in now on that very same day. We signed the final paperwork, so it's a very special day.
Triple anniversary.
Yeah, and so I turned 42, and I had my second anniversary with my lovely wife Carrie. And shout out to her, because she listens to literally every single episode of the podcast, gives us comments, and she helped start this whole thing out by buying the mixer that we're using to this very day.
I was thinking about that. Because the other day I gave Diver Corey the distinction of being Diver numero uno, and you were like, what about Carrie? And I was like, wives don't count. But the fact of the matter is, Carrie is one of the only people that she like live messages us while she's listening to the podcast
Yeah,
the
it's
first
like
time.
live tweeting at her reactions as she listens.
Yeah. So yeah, Carrie does count as a diver. She's diver Carrie as well as your lovely wife.
As wife Carrie.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was my birthday and anniversary, so I was given some really cool gifts by my wife and my in-laws and whatnot, and it was really cool. And prize among them is a new amplifier, which is a Roland jazz combo, which famously used by Robert Smith, and it's been used on every Police album and just numerous super popular amplifier because it has a really, really interesting and unique sound. So that'll be featured on the next Barrowlands album for kind of those clean, more ethereal tones and stuff like that.
I was like, is that shifting or signaling a shift towards a more post-punk sound rather than a true Cascadian black metal sound?
We were never true anything. We were we were true hybrid mixologists. But I mean, here's probably like a world first. We're doing a Sisters of Mercy cover on our next album. So
yeah,
we're trending toward Ulver.
on the spectrum.
Well, we're experimenting. We're doing our thing, and so this amp is going to provide us some pretty cool sounds. I'm excited for it. And we went out to dinner to a super nice restaurant on the waterfront of the Columbia, and had a beautiful table overlooking the water and everything. It was just super nice. It was a great way to spend our anniversary, and had a good time. So that's pretty much the only major event aside from the normal work, disc golf, that kind of stuff.
Just the norm.
I keep myself busy.
Yeah, for sure.
But not a lot of new stuff. So that brings us to this drink we have before us. What is our podcast fuel?
Today, our podcast fuel is Millennials Hate Centennials by Riverbend Brewing Company. It's a fresh-hopped New England IPA. It's brewed with Centennial hops from Crosby Hop Farm. They're fresh-picked and tossed right into the kettle within hours. It's got, the tropical aroma, flavors of lemon zest and fresh pine, and a pillowy soft body. That's their words. And then I should, because they say it on the can, they have this very millennial, very designy can by Electric Graphics Design with this sort of the symbols of the millennial generation. It's like a succulent plant, an avocado, hot coffee, the Netflix logo, and I'm assuming it's a fixed gear bike.
Yeah, probably a fixie.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty good beer. It's I won't say it's the best fresh hop I've had this year because it's got they call it a pillowy body. It actually is weird that it kind of tastes almost it feels like a little thick. It's not it's not what I would call a crisp beer.
Yeah. I selected that on purpose because normally we're like a brunch time podcast, and today we're in full on breakfast time.
Yeah, this is straight up morning recording.
Yeah, so I thought a hazy, something with a little more body would be a better breakfast beer.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this literally is my breakfast. I haven't eaten today, so this is it.
Me either. We're gonna get punchy.
Yeah, it's gonna hit us. Maybe I won't have a second one a little bit later.
Oh, live on the edge.
All right, so let's go ahead and take a quick break, and then we'll come back and deep dive this crazy vampire movie.
All right, divers, welcome back. Let's dive into this. The Hunger, 1983, Tony Scott, based on the novel of the same name by Whitley Strieber.
I mean, this is a really interesting concept. The whole plot behind this movie, the meta, and so I mean, it's not super complex. And when the big reveal happens, you're like, oh wow, this is cool. But it does not surprise me. It's from a novel. This feels like something that could have been a really interesting book. Yeah,
so mea culpa, I normally I would say read the book, but literally what I listen to audiobooks because I have a lot of time on the road. This book is not available on audiobook. So I didn't get like every other Whitley Strieber book, Wolfen and the Greys and all this stuff. That's all available on Audible and at your local library, but not this one for some reason. So I didn't get into the book. I did a little research and basically the storyline is the same. I think it just the flashbacks that we get little vignettes of are much more expanded in the book. I think that's the main difference.
I think that would have had a serious value add to me is having more historical content.
I think so too. Overall, this is a very stylistic movie, arguably over substance.
Yeah, it's very, very pretty to look at, and there's a lot of really cool cinematography. But a lot of times you're left kind of wondering what's happening or what's going on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just jumping into it, it literally opens with like a music video.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing you see is Peter Murphy looking dead down the lens of the camera. And I gotta say, my initial thought was like, this is going to be good. Because Bauhaus is one of my favorite bands, and so I was super stoked.
I was just kind of wondering, like, why did they have the literal band Bauhaus have a music video in the very beginning of this movie? Was it just an appeal to star power? Like, we've got Bauhaus and we've got David Bowie. Check this movie out.
I think that they just are emblematic of that scene, and they really wanted to capture that scene, the sort of Batcave goth scene. And Bauhaus is like the kind of the band in my opinion. I guess people might think Sisters of Mercy. I'm a Bauhaus guy, so I think it roots it right then in the time that the movie is set.
I mean, it's really great music, and it's a cool video, and it's kind of flashing back and forth between the band and kind of a scene that's playing out, where there's, this mysterious lady and a guy in a car, and it seems like, we're meeting the vampires, like that's what I was getting out of that.
Yeah, so our lead vampires, Miriam and John, it seems like they're picking up another couple for swinging activities is sort of how it's portrayed. And they're looking real smooth, and they easily pick up a couple of goth party goers or whatever, and they take them back to their very swanky townhouse or something.
Yeah, and there's like, they have kind of, all of this is kind of artsy vignette music. There's not really much dialogue or any at all.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's like a scene change, and they've got like a projector, and the lady from the couple they picked up is like dancing in the light of the projector, and then Miriam is smoking, and John, played by David Bowie, is he's kind of looking on, and there's another dude, the other part of that couple, on the couch, and it's like, oh, okay, so this is kind of going to be an erotic scene of these vampires preying on this couple, and that's exactly what happens. They pair off. John goes with the lady, and Miriam goes with the dude. And they're getting busy, kind of.
Yeah, it definitely.
Style.
It looks like they're gonna hook up, a sort of normal swinging situation, and then these gold ankh necklaces with little blades on them come out, and throats get slit.
Yeah, it's like you pull the bottom part of the ankh, and a little knife blade comes out. And
so I was just like immediately struck. All this iconography, like the aviator sunglasses and the hairstyle. I guess Miriam wears like those new wave kind of triangle sunglasses. Yeah. How much this defined the look of the modern vampire. Like when you think of Dave and I both, grew up playing like the World of Darkness role-playing games. This is the setting of those games.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, 80s and 90s goth punk underground scene is definitely where all that took place. And the Ankh is kind of an iconic thing from those games. And I thought that this was This was pretty cool. It wouldn't surprise me if this movie was a heavy influence on the authors of Vampire the Masquerade, which came out after this.
Yeah, I think it definitely was. And I think this is, I don't know how you determine these things, but I really think this is where the Ankh becomes connected to vampire mythology, because they don't really have anything to do with each other.
Yeah.
And just stylistically, I'm just struck by how influential this movie is.
I mean, it's really cool, and near the end, kind of the erotic scene and the bloodletting and all of that, they're kind of going back and forth. They're flashing to a monkey, that's like a lab animal, and the monkey is doing things and behaving, and it's slowly like degenerating physically.
Yeah, the monkey is having a freak out and murdering its kind of cage mate, and it's real graphic and gross. And as the story goes on, this monkey and John are sort of tied together. Like thematically, the monkey and John are on the same trajectory. So anything that John does, the monkey does, it seems like, and vice versa.
And I didn't pick up on that immediately, but later on it became pretty clear. And then after they feed on this goth couple and kill them, they take their bodies and it seems like they own their own crematorium. Yeah,
they've got an incinerator in the basement. Like I love that they have like a fuck pad and a place that they reside. They don't. Yeah. The two don't overlap with each other.
I mean, if you're ultra rich, that sounds like an idea.
Yeah, I mean, if you can, why not? But they have their own incinerator, which I don't think buildings of that time. I don't think that's uncommon to have a trash incinerator.
Sure, they definitely would have boilers, and you could have an incinerator installed, I think.
So I work for an HMO, and I know what a medical waste disposal unit smells like.
Yeah.
If you were burning bodies on the regular, people would notice. Like that's not a smell that doesn't get noticed.
Yeah, for sure. I think, they're just sort of glossing over this idea. And then John and Miriam, there's a shower scene with the two of them, and they're naked and they're being romantic, and they keep saying like forever and ever.
Yeah, that's a repeated motif, the forever and ever.
Yeah, and they just kind of have this romantic moment after committing double homicide and burning the corpses.
It's just a reason to show David Bowie's butt, I think. If you're looking for it, it's here.
Yeah, and so then it kind of cuts to their bedroom, and I'm like, oh my God, there's a lot of daylight streaming in. And turns out these are not vampires that die in the daylight.
Yeah, there's a few places where they're showing they're not the typical vampires.
And this mythology is different.
They can kind of get daylight. I guess that gets expanded on the book, where daylight's uncomfortable, but a gauzy curtain is enough to kind of cut that down. And what we're kind of brushing over is it's cutting back to Susan Sarandon's character periodically. Yeah. So we see Dr. Sarah Roberts showing up in the morning while they're going to bed. She's showing up at work to discover one of her valuable research monkeys murdered one of the other ones. And it just, periodically we just cut back and forth to her.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I will admit, in the beginning of this movie, when it just kept cutting back and forth to the lab and those scientists talking and observing the monkeys, I was like, these people are boring. Just more vampire.
More vampire, less scientists.
Yeah, it's boring. It's not interesting to me. And so they're discussing it and talking about the monkey being agitated for 56 hours. And it's just not clear at this point in the movie what the point of this plot line is.
Yeah. And back with the I guess the more interesting story too, the vampires, John is not slumbering. Miriam
he can't
is
sleep.
Yes. Miriam's sound asleep. John is up smoking and thinking about the past when he was a human man. I placed that kind of late 1700s, early 1800s. Is that kind of your read?
Yeah, I generally mentally categorized it as the Renaissance.
Huh. I think that's way further back.
I don't
When's
think
the Renaissance? You're the history.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a pretty I'm going to go ahead and look that up. Basically it's the 14th to the 17th century. So yeah, it's a really broad period of time. And 17th century is of course the 1800s.
Okay.
So you were right and I was right.
Yeah, we're still Renaissancing then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, John is about 200 years old. That's what I got from Wikipedia.
Yeah, and it just seems like they're being all romantic, and in the flashback they say that forever and ever thing, and it keeps coming up. And then John's watching the news, and it's that doctor. She's on the news, and they're talking about this disease called progeria, where people age rapidly, and they show these pictures of people who look like very old people, but they're actually children with progeria.
Yeah, and it's a real disease. I looked that up. Just to be sure. Yeah. And so they're watching that, and they're very interested in it because what we're not quite picking up on yet is that John is degenerating.
Yeah, his interest is piqued because he's not feeling well, he's not doing well, and they drop, and there's a moment of dialogue between them where maybe it's a little bit later where Miriam is like, I've seen this before, like that kind of thing. Like she knows that there's like ailments that can happen to vampires because she's the experienced vampire.
Yeah.
But she's not cluing John in at all.
Yeah. I mean, he seems to kind of know because he's asking, how long did it take with your other partners? And she doesn't want to talk about it. She's given him the brush off on it. So this is something I think where it's expanded on quite a bit more in the book, that John and her partners are not true vampires. Like she's a true vampire and they're more something like a familiar
or a ghoul.
Yeah, exactly. Where she's imbued them with vampiric powers, but they're not full on what she is.
Yeah, and I guess in some mythologies and some different games and stuff, the idea of a master vampire exists, and so then all of the lesser vampires they create are weaker than them, and their power is tied to them.
Yeah, like Lost Boys.
Yeah, exactly.
So
the video store vampire.
Yeah, exactly. See that episode. I forget the number. So while they're watching TV, precocious neighbor girl Alice shows up for her twice weekly violin lesson.
I didn't like this character, but you could have predicted that.
Yeah, you always hate the kids.
This whole Alice plot could have been cut, and it wouldn't have hurt the movie at all. In fact, I think it would have improved the movie.
Alice is not what I would cut out of this movie, but
there's a lot of cutting to be done.
Not a lot. I mean, because it's a short movie.
Well, I mean, cut some of this stuff and then add more historical.
Yeah. Well, there's a particular point where I have that thought, so I'll save my thoughts on it.
All right.
But anyways, Alice is another New York, Richie, Upper East Side. She lives across the street from their swanky brownstone, probably in her own swanky brownstone, and she comes over for violin lessons 3 times a week. And I mean, the big thing from this scene to me, other than that a Polaroid camera was treated like it was quite a high-tech item, was David Bowie really playing the cello. Like,
I don't think he was really playing.
Yeah.
Based on his bowing, but
okay.
I think he had been coached fairly extensively on how to make the fingering look right.
Yeah.
So that when the music goes up in tone, he goes further down the fingerboard and stuff. It was really well done. Like Bowie was pantomiming, playing cello quite effectively, and the actress that played Alice also pantomimed playing violin quite effectively, but was not actually playing. And that's according to Diver Carey, who is a stringed instrument player, owns a cello, violin, is a expert viola player. She said they were not playing, but they were doing a good job faking it.
Okay. Well, that might mean that they both know how to play, but because they're not
the equivalent
recording
of
the
lip
actual
syncing.
Yeah, exactly. They're not recording the actual audio.
I think in both cases it was their bowing that was off, that wasn't realistic. So I think maybe their coaching was good, but maybe not totally complete.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
It could be your hypothesis that they were playing along, but they weren't. Obviously it wasn't the true recorded music.
Yeah, because if you didn't want to, we're spending a lot of time on this, but if you didn't want to make noise, you might be bowing much more softly than you would be doing it if you were actually intending to record sound.
Sure. And I'm not trying to be a well actually kind of guy.
Why not?
I'm saying that I think that this was well done. And to someone who doesn't play the instrument like me, I thought, well, that's either super good faking or he knows how to play the cello.
Totally.
It's one or the other. And so, yeah, that's pretty cool. And it's funny because they have this conversation between John and Alice, and Alice is like, want some lewds?
Yeah, Alice's stepmom, that's another thing where it really sets it in the time.
Yeah.
Alice's stepmom is a pill popper, and she's like, because John isn't sleeping well, and she's like, yeah, well, I've got Quaaludes in my bag because this is the 80s, and this is how we roll.
Yeah. And John's looking like hell.
Yeah.
He does not look good.
And this prompts Miriam to go and see Dr. Sarah. She's doing a book signing because research scientists are celebrities in this world.
Yeah, for sure.
And so she goes to a book signing to go and get her book. And there's a little bit of vampire chemistry going on. Like, she stares too long at Sarah, and Sarah's like, something's implanted in her head.
Yeah, I think she's using her, like Dracula, mesmerizing people.
See me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's classic. She looks into their eyes, they look back, and there's definitely some power going on. And it's interesting, that so Miriam goes to the hospital afterwards. She's trying to look into the research. Hospitals are not that easy to access, the back areas and stuff. She must have been using some vampire powers.
Yeah, because John does the same thing. When he comes later, he just goes right back into the back area, and they're like, you're not supposed to be here. It is like, I go where I want.
Yeah. I noticed that when she went there, she was looking for Dr. Humphreys. So shout out to the Humphreys who make an appearance in this movie.
Yeah. Well, probably their parents.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and so the doc that she gets to talk to, not Dr. Sarah, but the cool soul brother doctor with the sunglasses, he tells her that basically they have been successfully able to speed up the aging process, but they haven't figured out how to turn the dial back.
Yeah.
They're making a monkey age prematurely fast.
And they talk about the ramifications if they can turn it back. It's immortality.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool. And I mean, John, then it kind of goes to John's reading that book on gerontology.
Yeah.
And his hair is falling out, and Miriam's like, I've been there.
Yeah.
Like, no big deal, dude.
Yeah, and this is where he's grilling her a little bit. And he's
how
like,
long did it take?
Yeah, he wants to know how long he's got. And Miriam doesn't want to say because it's not long.
Yeah, she says like a week, something like that.
Yeah, and he's getting desperate, and he's kind of guilting her about, is Alice his replacement? Essentially, is he lining her up, or is she lining her up to be the replacement?
True. Turns out, yes.
I think she was. Yeah, that is accurate. She was like, maybe if I embrace a kid, then I can get a little bit longer out of them.
I think she was either lining up Alice or. Dr. Sarah.
Oh yeah, that's plan B.
Yeah.
But we get, is this no, this is our second flashback because preposterously Catherine Deneuve is flashing back to Egyptian times which is I guess where her origin lies.
So why is it preposterous?
Because that's a French lady, and I don't buy her as an Egyptian person, even a half Greek Egyptian person at all.
Well,
ethnically,
the Ptolemaic dynasty, which was the one that everyone thinks about, like Cleopatra and whatnot. They were not partially Greek. They were 100% Macedonian. It was a Macedonian family because it essentially extends around. I'm motioning with my hand like I'm teaching a lesson on a map.
Okay.
It goes down and around the side essentially of the Mediterranean Sea.
Okay.
The spread of people as well as ships and whatnot. But yeah, the Ptolemaic dynasty is Macedonian in origin, which is Greek, and the current Macedonia is neighbor to Greek, and there's also a Greek province of Macedonia, which actually is a huge beef between the countries.
Right. Yeah.
And one of the
I know
reasons Greece is cock blocking Macedonia from joining the EU.
Okay.
So it's not preposterous that a fair-skinned lady would be in Egypt during that time.
Okay.
Because of the Macedonian rule for such an extended period of time, not to mention, we don't know what era it is at all. Because if it is the Ptolemaic period, that would mean that it is during the time, the height of ancient Rome, in which we definitely know that more than one Roman general spent significant time in Cairo with legions. So it's very possible that she could have been
in that period
an Egyptian vampire that looks like she looks.
And to your point, France is just kind of across the water there.
Well, and
the south of France and Egypt, that's in the time period, people did make that journey.
Yeah, if I was writing a book and I was going to have an ancient Egyptian vampire, I might have them look not like a French lady, but historically speaking, it's plausible. It's very plausible.
Okay, so I will change my preposterous to plausibly.
It's plausible, but it's bad optics.
Yeah, I don't think they thought about that in the 80s. There was no representation discussion happening.
I think they should have just made her an ancient French vampire. That would have been great.
Easy to do.
Because this actress is good. Just sort of, how old do you think she was when this came out?
Catherine Deneuve. She'd already had a pretty, a career in French cinema at that point. I'm going to give her 36.
She was born exactly, or not to the day, but to the year, 40 years before this came out. So she's looking good.
Price is Right rules, man. Closest without going over.
Yeah.
36 is close to 40.
Yeah, that's close. I actually, when I saw her in this movie, I thought she was like 30.
Yeah, she looks good.
Yeah.
She still looks good.
Yeah, I didn't look up modern pictures of her, but I did check out her bio, and I was like, she was born in 43? Wow, she looked great in this movie.
So, and Lisa and I were talking about this. I remember from this time period, because I was a little boy, Catherine Deneuve was quite a sex symbol. But I look up her filmography, and it's almost all French films. Like she was just dipping her toe into American movies. Why did people know who she was in America?
I didn't. I mean, but I was a kid, and I was mostly concerned with kid stuff.
That's true. But she's top billing on this movie.
Yeah.
And it just seems like she was like Susan Sarandon. It seems like would have been a much bigger movie star at this point to me, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know either. I think Susan Sarandon definitely is. She's definitely not the leading sex symbol in this movie. Mm-hmm. Like Catherine Deneuve basically dominates it.
Yeah,
she does a great job. Anyway, so we're back where we were. This flashback to ancient Egypt, which is improbable,
plausible. We call it plausible.
Yeah, and it's just kind of odd. You see her wearing the trappings of nobility, and she's still got that same little ankh knife.
Yeah.
And she's putting it to use. That's where it comes from.
Yeah. And so John decides to go see Dr. Sarah himself. And he gets styled up as 1983 David Bowie. Like, I almost wonder if he is wearing his own clothes in this movie. And the fedora is a much maligned fashion item.
Yeah.
Certain people look dashing in a fedora, like David Bowie, Harrison Ford, Humphrey Bogart. there's a long list of people that look really good in it.
I even think you can wear it to this day if you're wearing it with the right outfit and you're not wearing a pinstriped fedora that has piercings on the brim that you can buy at Hot Topic.
Yeah.
That's stupid looking, according to me. But if that's your thing, we
don't turn you away.
Do you is low key code for fuck yourself. So
I was gonna say, don't think because you see David Bowie looking cool, I'm gonna look that cool when I put on a fedora. You will not become David Bowie.
I would say if you get a fedora and you wear a classic detective's long coat, a button-up shirt, some slacks, and some stylish shoes, you will look cool.
Okay.
There is no body type or look that can't make that won't improve.
Huh. I can't argue with that. You might be onto something.
It's about the outfit.
You have to put the whole outfit.
It's like you can't put on the chainmail shirt and be like, "Check me out, I'm a barbarian." It's like, I don't know, dude. Your Uggs make it a no-go, or maybe Uggs are okay. Your Crocs make it a no-go. You gotta have the whole outfit. You gotta put it together.
Uggs kind of are barbarian.
Yeah,
boots.
yeah. That's why I had to change to Crocs. Uggs would be a good sub if you're cosplaying. I'd accept that.
So, anyways, back to the plot. John goes to see Dr. Sarah, and Dr. Sarah is on her way to do what all research scientists have to do, which is beg rich people for money.
Oh, yeah.
And so she doesn't have time for John, who's trying to make a point about how rapidly he's aging.
He was like, "Yesterday I was 30 years old.
Do you understand? I'm a young man. Look at me." And she's like, "I don't want to look at you."
And she looks at him and gives him the unspoken, "Fuck off, you hypochondriac."
Mm-hmm. That's like doctors are used to this.
Yeah. I feel like that's the default that doctors start off is that I'm skeptical of what you say and I don't believe you.
And she goes and places him in the lounge, tells him she'll be back in 15 minutes, and then calls security. And is like, "Keep an eye on this guy."
And she's I noticed in the scene there's people smoking in the building and I was like, ugh. Like it instantly like grosses me out. It's weird. Like it dates it super hard.
Yeah, it's right in this time when smoking is going out of fashion. However, there's still ashtrays everywhere.
Yeah.
Which is that's our childhood. As Gen Xer of later Gen Xers, that's the time we grew up.
Yeah, and he's looking really haggard at this point. It's I want to give a shout out to the physical effects artists that aged David Bowie. It's so good.
Did you get the name on that guy?
I did not get the name.
Because I think he might have been nominated for Academy Award.
It's just it looks so good and it's so gradual and it's just and I didn't even know you could even make someone look this old. Like not in this scene, but as the movie progresses, he keeps getting older. It's just like amazing, and it's all physical effects because in '83 they
just
weren't
makeup.
Yeah, they weren't doing. I mean, there's some latex involved here and there, but it's just really good. I highly enjoyed watching this transformation. And did you get the name?
No, but so it is cutting back and forth between John aging there
and a monkey
and the monkey who's going through the whole the same process. It's
I did not enjoy this. I don't like seeing animals suffer,
and it feels too real.
Yeah.
So I was really uncomfortable with that, and I've looked into it a little bit, and I couldn't find anything about animal welfare
was
in
there
the movie.
An animal harmed? Because it was it seemed like an animal, like a monkey had been like done dirty. Like I did not like that at all.
Yeah, no, I don't. You know how now movies will have like a ASPCA tag at the no animals were harmed in the making of this movie. Mm-hmm. I'm not 100% sure that's applicable to this movie.
Yeah, I don't think so. And at this point, John's going home and whatnot, and he's unrecognizable. He doesn't look like David Bowie. He doesn't look like young, handsome John. Mm-hmm. He's having a hard time getting across the street.
Yeah,
it feels like he's almost gone.
Yeah, and as he was left in the waiting room for 2 hours. Yeah, he runs across Sarah Roberts as he's leaving, and he's like, "Dr. Roberts, I'm disappointed in you. You let me down." And she sees how much he's aged in 2 hours, and she wants him to stay, but he's miffed with her.
Good day.
Yeah, and so he leaves.
Yeah, and it seems like he's super hungry. Like at this point, you get that vibe that he's like, I need some blood.
Oh yeah, because anytime he's halfway alone with someone or in close proximity to someone, he's like hearing their heartbeat and looking at their throat and clutching his Ankh necklace. And then this is what the scene I was saving this opinion for.
The roller skate dance scene?
Yes. So we've got a guy with a mullet roller skating in an underpass to Iggy Pop. And it's a long scene.
It's a long dance montage.
Yeah, we hear almost, I mean, not the full song, but we hear quite a bit of the Iggy Pop song. Mm-hmm. And John comes up and attacks the guy while he's roller skating.
Yeah.
This is like a 90-minute movie. You don't have time for these sort of scenes, in my opinion.
Yeah, you don't have time for 2.5 minutes of dance.
Yeah. So this is kind of like where I'm starting to question some of the decisions that are being made in the storytelling was right here.
Yeah, and I firmly categorize this in the same mental space as opening on a music video from Bauhaus. Mm-hmm. It was like you're trying to cash in or lean in on your 80s, you're cool, you're scene, this is neat, whatever. They're really like leaning into that.
Yeah.
And I get it, but it actually would have been cooler if you had leaned into these historical immortal beings and kind of framed them as fish out of water and whatnot. Don't focus so much on the 80s people, focus on the vampires.
Yeah, more on the story and less on the aesthetics.
Yeah, and I mean, there are cool aesthetics associated with these vampires. Like when they're in their beautiful New York home and it's got like these statues which seem very clearly that Miriam has had for
she's just been collecting them, yeah.
And it's just beautiful. Like there's so many cool shots. No need to have a roller skate dance scene. No need to have a Bauhaus music video. You could have had that on the trailer. You could have opened with that same song and had them predating these people, but focus on the vampires. It's a vampire movie.
And not so much on the band, like really showing the band. Yeah.
The band didn't even need to be in the opening
Just
sequence.
The music and the club would have done. Yeah.
Exactly. We don't need Peter Murphy. He's not in the movie.
We always need Peter Murphy.
No. I like Bauhaus, but I mean, it's not a good storytelling decision in my opinion.
Okay. I'm with you. Anyways, John can't even overpower a roller skater.
Yeah, he fails.
He fails at his attack. He rolled a 1 and...
Yeah, what Vampire the Masquerade player has not botched a feeding check?
And so he heads home, and poor Alice picks the worst time for an unscheduled visit.
Yeah.
Because she can't come to practice tomorrow, so she wanted to leave a note for Miriam, and... old John lets her in, and they have this, to me, this is a really sad, tragic, suspenseful scene.
This is a really vampire movie scene. This is what I come for.
Yeah.
It's somewhat emotional because John understands he's so old he's not recognizable. He sees Alice as his replacement, and I think he likes Alice.
Yeah, no, I think
and the effects at this point, the physical effects are just so amazing. And the actress that played Alice does a great job. She's like, are you sure you're not John's father?
Yeah, so that's shouts to Beth Ehlers. And this is why when you said, cut the Alice storyline, I don't think so, because I think this is one of the best scenes in the movie.
Maybe so, and maybe the other scene was its existence purely propped up this scene.
Yeah.
I just think that scene was a little bit boring. Okay. It wasn't that additive to me, but if as a setup to this scene, yeah, it was pretty cool. Because basically what happens here is he's interacting with Alice, and Alice is talking, and he asks her to play and all of that, and then he snatches her and cuts her with the Ankh knife. And you see the blood splatter onto the sheet music and it spreads on the paper. It's really artistically done.
Yeah. That's not what blood looks like on paper.
Not at all. But, it was cool.
Yeah. And it's really tragic because you know the futility of it. No matter how much he feeds, he's out of time. And so she's snuffed out for no good reason, but just because he can't control himself.
See, I think that there was it was interesting to consider the ramifications of this and the motivations, because I think character perspective, whereas we're just watchers of this movie, the author and probably the director really considered what is John doing and why. He's doing this partially because he failed to overpower the dancer, who's a full-grown man.
Yeah.
But he can overpower a juvenile girl.
Right.
Also, he has already sort of indicated that he thinks Alice is his replacement. And so this is almost like a spite move against Miriam.
Because he resents Alice.
Yeah, he resents her. He's jealous of her. And he needs blood. And she's a handy victim that literally came to him. It was an opportunist thing that's also a situation where he gets to put his thumb in Miriam's eye.
Yeah. No, I think you got the right read on that.
It was pretty cool.
And yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty
terrible. It was pretty cool artistic storytelling.
Yes.
I'm not saying killing a kid is cool. That's not cool.
A deep dive of the meta, we do not advocate child murder.
No, but we do advocate artistic scenes in movies.
So Miriam gets home and she finds John sulking in the music room, and he guilts her more about we get the repeated refrain of forever and ever.
Forever and
you
ever.
said forever and ever. And Miriam just can't deal with this because it's harsh on her mellow, and John's begging her
to kill me.
Yeah, release me. And she's like, she can't or really won't do that.
And she says specifically to him, and I wrote this down because I thought it was just really dark. She goes, "There is no release, my darling. No rest." I was like, ooh, that's dark.
Yeah, and that's tough. And she finds one of Alice's signature Polaroid photos on the floor and immediately realizes what he did. She's like, oh, what did you I and she's mostly like low-key bummed. I wouldn't say heartbroken, but just sort of like, oh, I like that little girl.
Yeah.
That wasn't necessary.
It was definitely bummed out. Was the vibe. And she goes over and picks up John and just carries him out and takes him to the elevator. And they go upstairs and they get to this kind of airy attic place, and there's pigeons everywhere, and there's like shafts of light coming down through skylights, and it's really cool and artistically filmed. And you see there's like these canvas tarps, and they're over there's like some stuff is stacked, and she pulls out an empty wooden box, and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, so this is when she, I think for the first time, explains to John what the backside of Forever and Ever looks like.
Yeah,
which is basically your body wears out and can no longer sustain being a vampire, but you won't die. And so I just put you in a casket and I stack you up with all my other lovers from history.
And you hear when she moves the like it rustles, she moves the tarp and stuff, you hear moaning from the other boxes.
Yeah. I guess John's never gone upstairs.
No, this is her private place.
Yeah, and because she just has casket on casket.
Yeah,
they're stacked. They're stacked up there because, she's from Egyptian times, so she's had a few partners.
And I just thought to myself when I saw this, when the big reveal that, like Forever and Ever is Forever and Ever, but it's a forever prison in a box. She doesn't even have the freaking wherewithal or kindness to kill them. I'm just like, oh my God, this is a horror movie.
Yeah.
This is dark.
Miriam is like one of those people that has, like a 30-year-old cat or dog. Like it's this chihuahua that's blind and has all sorts of stuff oozing out of it. But they never pull the trigger on putting it to sleep.
I think pull the trigger might be unkind.
That's not the right word. Yeah, poor choice of words given the context of what I was describing. But never make that hard decision.
They never choose mercy over self-comfort.
Right. And so it's just easier for her to put John in a box in the attic and introduce him to the other zombies that are living in boxes in the attic. And, go ahead to go see Dr. Sarah, because
at this moment, my thoughts when she puts him in the box, closes it up, puts him in the stack, covers him with the tarp, I think to myself, Miriam is straight up evil. This is just evil. And then what's she do? She goes straight to the next one.
Yeah, because Dr. Sarah, who she already low-key enchanted on their first meeting, just like she just puts irons in the fire whether she's going to ever pull them out or not.
Yeah, she's just planting seeds. She might go and water them later.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Dr. Sarah shows up because she wants to see John, and Miriam is like, John's gone to Switzerland. And Sarah's like, oh no, just like her mind goes to like, he went to go see some other doctor when I should be studying him.
He went to some specialist there to get treatment, and he's not going to get treatment.
Yeah. And so Sarah gives Miriam her contact info. When you have to be by a landline, this is much more complicated than it is now.
Yeah, for sure.
And she leaves, and then a detective shows up looking for Alice.
Yeah, and I mean, this was another throwaway scene. The whole detective angle, this could have just been cut.
Yeah, but shouts to legendary character actor Dan Hedaya, playing kind of the same schlubby guy that he plays in every single movie.
Yeah, I mean, I just didn't really think there's much of a value add. They talk, she dismisses him, and that's that.
He's not a good detective.
No.
It's like,
he notices nothing. There's been no cleanup really done.
We did get a kind of obligatory her throwing the Polaroid camera in the incinerator. Like,
Sure. It's pretty minor. But basically, we're pretty sure that at this point, Miriam's going for Sarah Roberts, the doctor.
Because Sarah is like walking back to the hospital. She's nearly hit by a truck.
Yeah.
And it's sort of implied Miriam uses like her vampire magic to stop the truck. She kind of clutches the note with the contact info, and the truck comes to a stop.
Yeah, I thought to myself immediately, I was like, oh, well, that semi-truck has amazing brakes that don't exist in reality.
Right?
Totally. It's a full-on Mack truck, and it stops on a dime.
And then what happens after that? I
mean,
guess
basically
just Sarah comes back, right?
Well, because Sarah is having like hallucinations. She's hearing sounds and not feeling well.
She keeps hearing the phone ring, which is
she goes in.
Miriam kind of calling her to call her.
Yeah, she it's like all awkward. She goes back to Miriam's place because she's not feeling well, and then she's chatting with Miriam while Miriam's playing piano softly. And then they have drinks, and they're getting comfortable. Dr. Sarah takes her jacket off.
Yeah.
And you're just like, this is enchantment. No sane person would do this.
I like the thing I like about the scene is that how aloof Miriam is. Like, she's just playing the piano and playing this sort of sapphic love song about a woman in love with another woman. And Susan Sarandon's like, is it a love song? She's like, I told you it's a song about two women. She's like, well, it sounds like a love song. Well, then I guess it is.
and it gets, and then the cheesiest thing in the movie happens. Basically, Sarah spills wine on her white blouse, and she's like, she doesn't say it, but better take this off.
Yeah.
I was like, oh God.
Yeah, but like I said, this was the other scene in the movie I had seen.
God.
I'm a fan of Susan Sarandon. We're not, one time I was listening to, we'll do a little sidebar here. I was listening to a podcast, and there was a guy, and he was talking in a gross way about a female celebrity that he thought was attractive. And I don't want to do that here.
No.
We're not those kind of people. But I will say, I think Susan Sarandon's a very attractive lady.
Well, I mean, obviously, this scene was included for its, the artistic value of the story. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it's a story of humans and immortal beings, and humans have sex with each other. Mm-hmm. So do immortal beings. Yeah. And so they portrayed it in a way that wasn't like graphic or gross or anything. Mm-hmm. It was a good scene. And
very romantic, stylized sex scene.
Yeah, it was totally stylized sex scene between this vampire and her new victim, who is totally into it. Mm-hmm. We're not sure if that's because she's been enchanted or what.
I think it is. I think consent is very shady with vampires.
I think vampires don't respect consent.
No,
that's a show title.
The big. Okay.
Yeah, divers, if you don't know, we don't come up with show titles until after we record.
Yeah, so. Well, I think, or in the process.
Or in the process, yeah. So, I mean,
Sarah gets her first taste.
Yeah,
here.
She makes her vampire. Like, she cuts her, they exchange blood. It mingles right there.
So is this book and movie where that exchanging blood, like the vampire they drink your blood and then you drink their blood, and that's how you become a vampire? Is this where that came into the canon? Because I kind of think it is.
Oh, I think it predates that.
Do you?
This
okay.
movie. I think vampire mythology in general. Not that I'm a mega expert. I'd call myself an enthusiast. Mm-hmm. It's really old. It's literally thousands of years old from many cultures.
Actually, and now I think about in Dracula, in 31 Dracula, she says that she drank his blood. So, okay.
I think that this is a play on a trope.
Yeah.
And it's done well. The thing that interests me is that Miriam doesn't have fangs, so she uses a knife, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, it's a little different.
Yeah.
And so we cut over to Sarah and Tom, who Tom is she's Sarah's boyfriend and another research scientist. He's not very interesting.
He's a clod. Let's be real. He's not a good boyfriend.
Yeah, I wrote that Tom is suspicious and possessive. I was just thinking, like, he probably read more sympathetic in 1983 than he does in 2021, where we no longer tolerate guys acting like this.
Yeah, because, I mean, seriously, I'm watching this and he's like, what were you doing with that lady for 3 hours? And I just thought to myself, if my wife came home and was like, oh yeah, I went over and I was talking to, a person I barely know, like say our neighbor's catty corner to us. Mm-hmm. I went over there and we got to talking in their living room and she was telling me all about their, family and stuff. And 3 hours had gone by. I'd be like, cool, they sound like nice people.
Yeah, it would just roll on.
It would be like, whatever.
You're like, I think that's a little irregular. You spent 3 hours over there.
Yeah, I'm just like, seriously, dude?
Yeah.
Like, and how would he feel if he spent 3 hours with a buddy or whatever, even a new friend, like, oh yeah, I met this cool person and like we just were like flowing and it was cool. They're going to be a friend of mine, I can tell.
Yeah.
And she's like, that sounds very irregular. It's like, this is just a jacked scene.
Yeah. And the whole time they're in this fancy restaurant that overlooks a pool and there's some girls swimming down there. And the whole time, Sarah is watching them and seeing herself and Miriam swimming nude in the pool instead of the girls that are down there.
Yeah. And he's like grilling her like, you ordered the steak. Why aren't you eating the steak?
Yeah.
And she's like, I thought I wanted it, but now I don't.
Yeah, because she's hungry but can't eat because she's a vampire now. And so she's wearing John Zonk necklace.
Yeah. Oh man, the switch over was that fast. I was just like, holy crap. Miriam doesn't give a damn about these companions.
He hasn't even tried, or he hasn't even stopped trying to get out of the box yet.
Yeah, it's gnarly. And so then they go back to their apartment or whatever, Susan and her dude, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
And she's like vomiting. She's worshiping at the porcelain altar. She's just totally like just purging everything.
Yeah, because she can't eat food or seemingly or something.
And was it John that took some of her blood to go have it is that
or
not
Tom.
John? Was it Tom that took some of her blood to go have it examined?
Well, I think they went back to the lab since they, thankfully work at a research hospital. And they're analyzing her blood, and our blood scientist guy is explaining how there's two types of blood, one of them not human, and they're fighting for dominance.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, this is an interesting way to portray this. And they want to take more blood, and they have her roll up the sleeve, and they see the incision. I guess they took the blood from the other arm the first time.
Something like that. It's a little bit of a weird scene. I like how they're trying to incorporate
pseudoscience.
Yeah, pseudoscience, weird science, whatever you want to call it. It's just interesting. And so then Sarah goes back to confront Miriam.
Yeah, she's like, "What did you do to me? Where'd this blood come from? Blah blah blah." And Miriam just like slams her against the wall and is like, "You belong to me now. You don't get to talk to me like that."
Yeah, they have a little tussle, and Miriam gets like a little wound on her face or something. Like
gets scratched.
Yeah, it's a two-way street going on here. Sarah is not going calmly into the night.
And so Miriam lays it down for her. I'm a vampire. I've made you into a vampire. You belong to me. No matter what you want to do, you're going to have to come back to me because you'll need to feed. And I'm the only one that can teach you how to do it.
Yeah.
Sarah storms out, goes to a payphone to call Tom. But she's not having any luck. She gets accosted by young Willem Dafoe.
I noticed that. That was pretty cool.
With a quick little cameo. And him and his buddy think she's a crazy junkie. Just in case the addiction metaphor that they've been laying down very thickly wasn't getting to you, they pinned a rose on it and called her a junkie.
So how do you think this whole thing would have been scripted out in a modern movie with like cell phones and stuff? Because there's a lot of drama surrounding the fact that she can't get a hold of him because he's not near a phone.
I guess it would just go to voicemail is how you would accomplish that.
Yeah, maybe she texts him and he doesn't reply or something because his phone's dead, maybe.
Yeah, and so basically she's out of luck. Like there's nothing she can do, so she goes back to Maison de Blaylock.
She's like, oh man, everything's horrible. So once again, I'm going back to the vampire's lair, just like I did last time. Nothing could happen badly.
Yeah, and so Miriam is like, well, you need to feed. And so she goes out into, I call pre-Giuliani sleazy Times Square. This is before the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company and all the touristy spots. It's when it's all peep shows and creeps.
And they pick up some super chode. Like, this dude is a fucking lame-o.
I liked his shoes. He had some cool creepers on. But, yeah. I think... Are we, because of she gets him from Times Square in 1983, are we supposed to think he's a rent boy? Like, he's for sale?
I don't know.
Actually, is that offensive? Are we to think he is a sex worker?
I didn't get that impression.
Okay.
I got the impression that he was just a dude who was looking to hook up, and
he was there looking for a sex worker.
Or just a lady who's also looking to hook up, just people picking up people.
Yeah.
That's what I got from it.
Well, he gets picked up.
Yeah, which is what he wanted.
Yeah, and we get this little interlude to Tom who's calling the blood doctor to see if Sarah showed up.
Yeah,
and what is with the lighting in their house? They have this really intense neon lighting that kind of whatever color it is, it's sort of fitting the mood of the scene. And it's like, no one lives like this. No one lives where my whole apartment is lit by
Were there people that used neon lights in their house because it was cool and modern?
Well, like for effect, not for when you're just hanging out.
Not just all the time.
Yeah. You turn it on if you're having a party, but not if you're just like making business calls. You're like, and I think this is a purple scene.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean that goes on those calls. I mean nothing comes of it, and then ultimately they take this hookup dude, and Miriam cuts his throat. Yeah,
she lets him wander around the house and get scared for a while. She's definitely the cat and mousing him.
Yeah,
but Sarah doesn't feed. She can't bring herself to do it.
Yeah, she's just not into it at all.
But then Tom shows up because everyone's drawn to the Blaylock house.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, why go there? How does he even know where to go?
He knows that Sarah went there.
But how does he know the address? Like, how does he know where to go?
She probably, because he is so possessive and controlling, he probably asked her, where it was and what the address was.
Or just looked in her address book because those are physical things back in the day.
Yeah, and he's invasive like that. Well, however he gets there, he finds himself caught up in the spider web. And
so the lame chode guy died for nothing. Nobody even fed on him.
I think Miriam probably
You think
did.
she might have been
She's
waste not want not.
Yeah. She had her fill and then dumped him in the incinerator.
Yeah, so like Tom shows up and somehow Tom knows that Sarah is upstairs.
Oh, Miriam tells him she's like second floor in the bedroom.
Oh, okay. I didn't catch that. Maybe I was jotting down my notes when that happened.
Yeah.
But it was like he goes up there and she's not doing well at all. She's like convulsing in the bed and it's just gnarly. She pushes Tom away. They kind of struggle. And I'm just thinking to myself, why is he grabbing her if she's not feeling well? That's not what you do when someone's sick.
Right. So she is very well playing what someone in opioid withdrawals looks like. And Tom is too rough with her. Like, he's very, like, sympathetic to the point, but really resentful that she's done this to herself. Like, he has no real compassion or empathy for her. He's just frustrated with her.
Yeah, he's a dick.
Uh-huh.
Tom is a dick.
Well, R.I.P. Tom, because she does finally feed.
Yeah, yeah. And to quote, famous streamer, rest in pepperonis, because we don't actually respect you because you're a dick. So yeah, basically, they cut Tom's throat, and there you go. And so I don't know if was there another Egyptian flashback?
Yes, there wasn't. I was going to brush over it, but there wasn't it.
And
because that's Miriam is like, I remember the first time I fed or something like, and she's thinking to murdering some lover of hers back in Egyptian times.
Yeah, is weird. And so it is improbable, but it's possible, as we covered before. So basically, Sarah's all covered in blood, and Miriam seems stoked.
Yeah, so Sarah comes down, Tom blood all over her shirt, and she's feeling better. And Miriam explains the sort of abridged vampire rules that she gives to a new partner, and completely omits the part that after forever and ever comes rotting in a box in the attic. And they go and they have a kiss, and Sarah pulls out the Ankh necklace and stabs herself in the neck. She's like, I'm not cut out for this life.
Yeah, I thought like, oh my God, she stabs herself in the neck to deny Miriam the pleasure of possessing her. That is darkness.
Mm-hmm. And Miriam's bummed out, but she's like, well, I guess I'm going to put you in a box in the attic, and just sort of goes about her business. But John has staged something of an attic zombie revolution. She gets up there and he has roused the other dead lovers.
All the coffins are open and all these necro old pseudo vampires are out of the box and they look gross. They're gnarly.
And Sarah's like Miriam is pleading with them. I love you all. And they're all kind of coming for her and they chase her around and there's lots of doves. It's like a Prince video. And they end up pushing her over the banister and down through the central staircase that runs through the apartment.
Yeah, and she hits the floor. And evidently that was enough damage to her body or whatever. She immediately starts aging just insanely. Mm-hmm. And all of her lesser vampires, the people she's created, they all like fall to the ground and deteriorate to dust.
And is that the end of the movie, Dave?
That was supposed to be the end of the movie.
You would think.
Except the studio wanted there to be a sequel possibility. Mm-hmm. And so they forced them to film an additional ending, which is an epilogue. This is supposed to end as just a nasty dark tale where this thousands of year old vampire finally gets done in by one of her puppet victims. But the studio forced the director to make an ending so that they could have possible sequel material.
Right. And so we get Lieutenant Allegraza, shows back up, and he's coming to follow up on his poorly investigated child disappearance, and finds that the house has gone
for sale. There's a realtor.
Yeah, and it's being handled by a law firm. The owners passed away. They're selling the house, and all the profits are going to a local research lab. Mm-hmm. And the detective kind of wanders around, and he finds one of Alice's Polaroids, his first clue.
It's like, oh my God, I did it. I found a clue.
And then we see, inexplicably, Sarah, not dead. Mm-hmm. Sarah has become the new vampire queen.
And she's standing on a balcony in London,
yeah,
overlooking the city. And
she has a couple familiars of her own.
And then it kind of goes, and you see a box in a room, and you hear Miriam inside moaning and asking to be let out.
Yep, that's how it ends.
It defies all of the rules you set up. So there was actually a interesting quote from Sarandon herself.
Yeah.
So I wrote this down, so I'm going to actually quote the actress. She said, "The thing that made the film interesting to me was the question of, would you want to live forever if you were an addict? But the film progressed. The powers that be rewrote the ending and decided that I wouldn't die. So what was the point? All the rules that we'd spent the entire film delineating, that Miriam lived forever and was indestructible, and all the people that she transformed eventually died, and that I killed myself rather than be an addict, and it was ignored. Suddenly, I was kind of living, and she was kind of half dying. Nobody knew what was going on, and I thought it was a shame."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, Susan Sarandon said it perfectly, because they made all the rules, and this is as an amateur wannabe author, there's the thing that you need to do is you need to create the sandbox, and you need everything to stay in the sandbox.
Right.
They made the rules, and then at the end, they defied all the logic, and it made no sense. You cannot have the lesser vampire now become the master vampire in this paradigm.
It doesn't make sense. Yeah,
it's illogical to the extreme.
Yeah. So that brings us to, I guess, what worked for you?
What worked for me? I love the spookiness of this movie and the overall concept of it. I liked the opening scene was so dark, and it was like this crazy goth erotic vampire scene. It was just so cool. And then I got lost a little bit. I kind of became less enchanted with it. But then when Miriam makes the full heel turn, and you're like, oh my God, she's so evil. I was like, okay, this is a horror movie, like because it's like psychological horror. She's locking these people in boxes who she'd professed to love and had made love her. And I just thought that is a really spooky, dark, sinister turn on vampirism without it being gory or jump scare or anything like that. And I thought that was extremely well done. So what about you? What worked for you?
Just one? Okay.
That's it. Literally nothing else.
I've got three. So number one, Stephen Goldblatt's cinematography and Milena Canonero's costume design. Aesthetically, stylistically, this movie's just superb. It's so gorgeous.
I could have agreed with that. I think that it looked beautiful, and I think we kind of commented on that throughout.
And this is not the first time I've shouted out Milena Canonero, because she worked on Clockwork Orange also doing costume design.
Yeah, and everyone in that movie looked awesome.
Yeah. So there's that. Then this is a very kinky queer movie. Sure. I think this is probably like a very formative sort of awakening movie for a lot of people. Like they watch this and were like, oh yeah, I'm into this. And so I like that. In 1983, I think it's well ahead of the curve in the sort of sexy factor that it's portraying. Okay. And then my number three thing was the expansion and modernization of the vampire mythology. It kind of it's rooted in, the themes of vampire films, but it really takes it into the 20th century in a way I don't think it had been yet. And so I think that's pretty cool. What didn't work for you?
Honestly, I think that it was a very linear, slow burn of a plot. There was only one surprise in the whole thing, and that was when you find out that she had an attic full of former lovers. And that was okay. I can be okay with a slow burn that's like pretty to watch and you're enjoying watching it unfold, even though it's very predictable.
Yeah.
That can be okay. But sometimes I felt like there was a lot of throwaway scenes that weren't additive.
Right.
And then finally, I really hated the ending. It killed it for me. Like I agree completely with Susan Sarandon. What is the point of all of this? You made an entire film creating these rules, and then at the very end, you just throw them out the window so that you can have this beautiful scene with Susan Sarandon as a vampire, when the whole crux of that, or the culmination of that character was her choosing suicide over permanent addiction.
Right.
And it was just like, man, this ending really was a bummer.
Yeah, it's weird. It's a happy ending that makes you feel bummed out for them fumbling the ball.
They jacked it up. So what about you? What didn't work for you?
So same on the ending. I don't like the studio requested epilogue. I think the drive of the story sort of falls apart after John dies, and then really loses it after Sarah and Miriam hook up. Like, we've been really just humming along to get to Miriam and Sarah hooking up. And then once they do, the story is sort of like, I don't know how we wrap this thing up. It reminded me of, like I said, a Silver Age comic.
Yeah.
Where you got 20 pages to tell your story, and Jack Kirby just was like, oh shit, I've drawn 18 pages. Yeah. And now I need to finish the story in these last two. And that's how the ending. So I guess twice I'm complaining about the ending. And then all of the sort of pseudoscience setup with the lab, and they're studying aging and blood disease and all of this stuff, and it's for nothing. Like,
yeah, it didn't contribute anything to the final resolution.
I could have stood to have maybe say one less roller skating scene and one more Dr. Sarah Roberts working in the lab trying to figure out what's wrong with herself, and using her scientific background and having some agency in the story and trying to cure herself or something.
Yeah, give her a little bit of super science or something.
Yeah, something like that, which I don't know if that's in the book or not. I know everyone's more developed in the book because that's just how it is. But
yeah, that's how books go.
Yeah, I needed more of that. So that's where I'm sitting. Rating time. What do you rate this one?
Final thoughts. So I would have. So there were a lot of problems with this movie overall, like music video, skating scenes, super slow plot, throwaway cop scenes, throwaway annoying boyfriend scenes, just a lot of wasted time that could have been spent on more interesting parts of the characters.
Right.
But I was willing to give it a 3 because I enjoyed it. I love vampire movies, so I'm enthusiastic to watch them.
Right.
But the ending, it put a stake in my heart. So I had to give it a 2.
Oh, you went down to a 2.
I had to. The ending killed it. It was not a 4-point movie that became a 3. It was a strong 3 that wanted to be a 4 had it been edited better, but then they staked themselves and gave themselves a 2.
And you mean story editing, not like actual film editing, because it's actually cut together.
Story
it's
editing.
cut together pretty nice.
It flows, but I think the story needed editing, and they should have chosen to film different scenes and emphasize different aspects of different characters. Those were poorly chosen for the flow of the movie, in my opinion, and for the development of meaningful characters.
Yeah.
So I just feel like there were a lot of errors in the choices made in the screenplay, maybe.
Yeah.
And so that made it a 3. And I wanted it to be more because I loved the idea of a David Bowie vampire movie. And also, I think Miriam was just an excellent character, and the acting was so fantastic. It was just amazing. She killed it in this movie. But it just... it just fell apart. As you went further and further into the movie, it degenerated, and then at the end, it just like the former lovers when Miriam fell down the stairs, it just disintegrated, and so it ended with a 2.
Oh man, so
I hate to do it.
I'm right there with you, and I didn't end up as low as you did, but so I came in really expecting a lot. Mm-hmm. And I had in my notes sort of where I was like, if we end right here, we're at a 5. It's just a 5-star, 5-star short film. And then after the scene where they're studying Sarah's blood, I said, right here, we're still at a 4. And then we get to the end. I'm landing on a 3 because I think there's a lot of value in this movie. But that ending, man, they really crashed the car at the end of this movie.
Yeah, I feel I don't know. I really wanted this to be better, and I hate to do it dirty like this with a 2 because I liked it. And I mean, I would say if you're a fan of vampire movies, you probably are willing to overlook a lot of it. But one of the things, if you're a fan of vampire movies, is the vampire mythos. It has to make sense. It needs to matter. And in this case, the studio threw it away at the end, and so that screwed it up. Oh. So as far as public reception goes, it's a little hard to show these ratings from online sources because, like we discussed in the last episode, they're all dated and it's mostly watched by enthusiasts. But still, Metacritic gives it a 52%.
Okay,
so that's 2.5. Rotten Tomatoes gives it 55%, 2 3/4, and then IMDb gives it a 6.7, which is the most generous of the offerings. So somewhere between a 2 and a 3, you and I are on it.
Okay.
So I think that we're pretty close. I could have gone with a 3 and justified it due to the beautiful like cinematography and the acting and whatnot.
Right.
But I have to take a stand against this ending.
I agree. Totally.
All right. So let's go ahead and take a quick break, and then we will wrap it up.
All right, welcome back, divers. It's time for that final segment, the one where I ask Dave, what are you into right now?
All right, so I was really searching my mind, trying to come up with something interesting for this section, but I figured, maybe I'll just keep it real and keep it non-glamorous with the divers. So last episode, I shared with everybody two YouTube channels. One of them was with Dr. Jackson Crawford's Norse History Research channel. Mm-hmm. And so related to that, I have been doing a lot of deep diving of ancient history and mythology.
Okay.
I've been doing some amateur scholarly historian stuff. I've been reading the book Children of Ash and Elm, which is a historical examination of the Viking era from a fairly modern scholarly perspective, looking at the most recent findings from grave finds and discussing objectively historical practices during the time of pretty much all aspects of life. It's really well written and a super interesting book. You can get it on Audible. You can also get it in hard copy. I've got it in both. So I think that's one area. And then secondly, I've been reading Dr. Jackson Crawford's translation of the Havamal, which is a poetic work that is it is from Odin's perspective. So he is essentially dispensing wisdom and advice. It's kind of like a bunch of psalms, but they're a little more, I don't know, they have more personality to them than the psalms do. Like he literally talks about ways to woo women in one of them, but he also talks about how men are liars and don't treat women well. So it's very interesting how there are things of wisdom. There's like one in there that talks about, it says, I'm paraphrasing because it's all Old Norse and every translation's a paraphrase. It says, animals die and your kin die and you will die too. Mm-hmm. But one thing that never dies is the reputation from the deeds that you've done when you lived. Mm-hmm. Things like that makes you think. It's the idea of legacy and the idea of community contact. So I've been doing some historical research, and I've been treating it pretty seriously. I've been taking extensive notes. I have pages upon pages of typed up notes and translations from the original Nor. It's actually not. Most of this is from the Codex Regius, which is not written in runes. It's written in Old English. So I've been writing different translations of certain words and things. And
so who would have taken down that codex? Is that like monks probably?
Yeah, this is from most of the material that we have from that is Norse historical material. I mean, and of course there are primary documents, or I call them documents, like runestones and archaeological finds and things. But the majority of the things that you find are from Iceland, because Iceland had significantly less impact from Christianization, destroying things and whatnot. And so there's, the famous Snorri Sturluson, who was a post-Christianization era, so we're talking 11s and 1200s era guy who wrote all of this stuff down as historical documentation, discussing things that were known and so he talks about, in the Poetic Edda, he talks about the historical, he actually just straight up like does poetic sagas, and then the Prose Edda is more like trying to explain it to you so that you can understand it. And so I've been deep diving into that stuff and really enjoying myself as an amateur historian. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why I decided to do this. I just got interested one day and just started up a notes document, as I am wont to do. Mm-hmm. And I just started doing it, and I've been enjoying it. I've been listening to some podcasts. I've been listening to audiobooks, watching YouTube videos. It's just where my muse has led me.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that is true deep diving. That's the intent and purpose of the podcast. So I think you're just being true to character.
Yeah, I'm just deep diving history.
Yeah. So when did that what do you say, Eric Roberts? Is that the guy's name?
Jackson Crawford.
Jackson Crawford. I don't know where I got Eric Roberts. Sort of rhymes. Sarah Roberts. I transposed them. So Jackson Crawford, when did his version of the Havmal come out?
So he's written two. He has a fairly recent one that is essentially that has a true translation of it, and then he also has one that he put out a few years before. His more modern, or his more recent, they're all modern. The more recent translation includes his original, which is called the Cowboy Havamal. Okay. Because he is he's a Rocky Mountains cowboy guy, and his grandfather was like a real Rocky Mountain cowboy, like doing shit. And so he did a true translation of it, but he translated it through the voice of his grandfather into kind of folksy Americana Western wisdom. Yeah. And so it's super interesting to read both of them.
Interesting.
And they're pretty new. I mean, I'm talking like the last 10 years.
Okay. Because I have a copy of the Havmal, and I think it's probably older than these. It's not probably one of these.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there have been dozens of translations of the Havmal that have come out, and some of the translations vary over the years as Old Norse scholars have understood more accurate translations of specific words because they can cross-reference from other finds that have greater context for the same words. Okay. So the translations evolve as understanding improves.
Yeah, totally. Well, that sounds really cool. I think that's all interesting stuff.
All right. So what about you? What are you into right now?
Okay, so I'll take us on a little bit of a wandering path. So I said my nephew and his girlfriend, shouts to Dominic and Alex, they came down last weekend, and we were out weebing around, and so we went to Kinokuniya, and they both picked up some manga. Dominic got the first volume of Blade of the Immortal. I was pretty proud of him because he said that new anime and manga is not speaking to him, and he wanted to go back to some older stuff.
Nice.
And he's like, "This looks cool. What's this?" And I was like, "That is cool. You should read it." But I noticed Alex had the first volume of Beastars, which I was aware of, but I hadn't watched. And so when we went back to our house to catch a vibe, as the kids say, I put on Beastars because I saw volume 1 of it, and it started, and it's a show about anthropomorphic animals. So I was prepared to not take it seriously, and ended up binging both seasons. It totally captured me and sucked me in. So Beastars is an anime on Netflix. It's from Studio Orange, who they're the ones that brought us Godzilla Singular Point, which I've referenced before on the show. And it's directed by Shinichi Matsumi, who did the 2011 Thundercats reboot that I really liked. I don't know if I've ever talked about. I think I've talked about that on the show too.
Briefly.
Yeah, so it's got a good pedigree here going into it, and it's adapted from the manga by Paru Itagaki. And it's really weird. It's like a coming of age story with anthropomorphic animals, set at a Japanese boarding school, and it opens with a murder mystery right off the bat. There's a devouring where one of the carnivore students devours one of the herbivore students.
Dang, so it just gets deep.
Oh yeah, I was
off.
I was like, oh man, I go, this Zootopia sequel is pretty heavy. And so, like, basically, if you're familiar with Zootopia, the Disney movie,
I am not.
Okay, so that's an anthropomorphic. It's a really similar setup, and they use the divide between carnivores and herbivores to kind of comment on racism in American society.
Okay.
But Japan's more of a monoculture, so it's got different issues. And so it's really an allegory about the darker side of Japanese society, kind of told through cute animals. And it gets into heavy stuff about organized crime and human trafficking and like really serious issues, but it's through the lens of the drama department at this high school with a wolf named Legoshi, and the president of the drama club, who's a deer named Louis or Ruiz, and they have a love triangle with their mutual love interest, who's a dwarf rabbit named Haru. And so it's very melodramatic and teenage, and then like very dark and sinister and dealing with really heavy real world stuff. Like, and it bounces well back and forth between the two things. It's so weird. I mean, because I don't really know, it's hard to really put it in a box because of that. And then, because I'm a fan of animation, I tend to be a little critical of modern computer generated anime. But I think it uses the technology really effectively to do things with the camera that would be impractical to do either in live action or in traditional animation. Like some of the fight scenes and stuff are just really well shot and choreographed. And I just think, like, this is really serious. Like, this is very cinematic, and it's
Well, if we know anything about Japanese content creators, it's that they will generally microanalyze everything so that everything is intentional and nothing is just accidental.
Take it seriously, much more seriously than it seems like it should be taken.
Yeah, for sure.
So anyways, Beastars. I don't want to give away any of the big reveals or anything, so I'm going to keep it.
Where can you watch that?
This is on Netflix.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I just there's like 24 episodes, and I just jammed through that in a couple days.
Dang.
Because like the kids left and went about their business, and I just kept watching. So, call to action.
All right. Subscribe to us on your favorite podcatcher, including YouTube, and rate us generously. Get a 5-star review, costs you nothing, but means everything to us.
You can find us on all social media platforms across the metaverse as Deep Dive the Meta. Right now, we're both liking Instagram, but we're also on Pinterest, which no one likes.
Well, I guess this is really goodbye.
Don't say goodbye. Say good journey.